Hello, everyone. My name is John. Today, we delve into a chilling narrative that underscores an all-too-familiar adage. Tragedy often strikes the best among us. This tale from Bangladesh is a somber testament to that, revolving around the life and untimely demise of an exceptional young man named Shibl Sadic. Sadic, just 18 years old, hailed from Chattogram, a city renowned for its ancient seaport and vibrant harbor that has buzzed with activity for centuries. Despite his youth, Sadic bore the weight of his family's hopes and humble beginnings. His father, Shafiq, was a hard-working truck driver, and his mother, Nahid Akar, a devoted housewife. Sadic was their only child, the sole beacon of light in their modest household. From a young age, Sadic exhibited a voracious appetite for knowledge and harbored grand ambitions for his future. Understanding the financial constraints that shackled his family's prospects, he took it upon himself to contribute financially. Thus, he started working at a nearby poultry farm. This wasn't just a job for him. It was a stepping stone towards fulfilling his educational aspirations. The meager earnings of his father were insufficient to cover even their basic needs, so Sadic's income became crucial for his continued education. Despite his tender age, Sadic's diligence and aptitude did not go unnoticed at the poultry farm. His commitment and hard work paid off when he was promoted from a general laborer to the position of manager. This promotion was not just a testament to his capabilities but also a reflection of his character. Even with the newfound authority, Sadic remained humble and dedicated. He was well respected by his colleagues, who were significantly older, yet they admired and followed his lead, recognizing his sincerity and dedication to his work. Sadic's role as a manager required him to uphold a high standard of integrity, ensuring that everyone performed their duties honestly. However, his strict adherence to honesty sometimes led to friction among his peers. Despite occasional disputes, these conflicts were typically minor and resolved on-site, never escalating beyond the farm's fences. Apart from his job and studies, Sadic led a simple life devoid of any distractions. He was disciplined and punctual, always managing his responsibilities well and ensuring he was home before nightfall. But on August 28, 2023, a typical day morphed into the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. Sadic left for work in the morning, performed his duties but, unlike every other day, he failed to return home that evening. At first, his parents assumed he was detained by urgent tasks at the farm. However, as hours ticked by, worry started to gnaw at them. By late night, between 11:30 and midnight, they attempted to contact him several times, but their calls went unanswered, a first in Sadic's routine. As the night stretched into early morning, anxiety turned to panic. Repeated attempts to reach Sadic met with silence. Desperate, they even tried contacting the poultry farm's owner, but to no avail. His phone too was unreachable. With dawn breaking and no word from their son, Sadic's parents were consumed with dread. They scoured the neighborhood and questioned other workers at the farm, but no one had seen Sadic or knew of his whereabouts. Their distress peaked on the morning of August 29th, when finally, a call came through from Sadic's phone. Relief momentarily washed over his parents, but it was quickly replaced by an overwhelming sense of dread as they picked up the call. The voice on the other end was their son's, but it was tinged with panic and fear, a stark contrast to the calm demeanor he usually maintained. Following the chilling revelation from Sadic, his mother's heart sank. Through a trembling voice, Sadic confessed he had been abducted and subjected to continuous mistreatment. "They've been beating me severely, and I've been locked in a car for the past 12 hours. He disclosed in hushed tones, the fear palpable through the phone. Before he could share more, the call abruptly disconnected, plunging his mother into a vortex of fear and uncertainty. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Sadic's parents were now certain. Their son was in the clutches of kidnappers. The abrupt termination of the call suggested that the kidnappers had interfered, further confirming their worst fears. In the role of the family's only heir, Sadic's safety became an unbearable burden on his parents' shoulders, particularly his mother, Nahid Akar, who frantically redialed his number, only to have the calls disconnected repeatedly. Amidst this torment, Nahid was on the verge of approaching the police to report her son's kidnapping when the phone rang once more. This time, however, it wasn't Sadic on the line, but a stranger, whose chilling words froze her blood. "Your son is with us. If you want him safe, do not attempt to contact him again," the voice threatened. The demands followed swiftly. A ransom of 1.5 million Bangladeshi taka was needed for Sadic's release. Details of the payment to be disclosed in a subsequent call. Given their dire financial situation, the ransom amount was a mountain too steep for Sadic's impoverished family. Scrambling to collect any money they could, Sadic's parents reached out to relatives and neighbors. From the 28th to the 31st of August, despite their relentless efforts, they managed to gather only a fraction of the demanded sum. On August 31st, as the kidnappers re-established contact, Sadic's parents confessed their inability to amass the colossal sum. Surprisingly, the kidnappers, perhaps aware of the family's financial incapacity, lowered the ransom to 2 lakh taka, a still substantial but slightly more feasible amount. However, even this reduced sum was daunting for the family. Responding to their plight, the kidnappers issued a stern ultimatum: pay the 2 lakh taka, or face the grim fate of their son. Desperate and determined, Sadic's parents pleaded for a 4-day extension to gather the funds. They embarked on a harrowing quest, borrowing from shopkeepers and appealing to the sympathy of their community. Through sheer perseverance, they managed to scrape together the required amount by September 4th. On that tense afternoon, as instructed by the kidnappers, Sadic's father headed to the rendezvous near the Bandarban district headquarters, the ransom in tow. The area was desolate, heightening the anxiety of the exchange. Soon, 2 figures approached, their identities obscured by masks that revealed only their eyes. There was no conversation. The men were there for one purpose only. They took the money swiftly and left, leaving Sadic's father alone with his hope and fear intertwined, waiting agonizingly for any sign of his son's return. Apologies for the oversight. Let's expand the narrative further to meet the word count requirement. As the kidnappers disappeared into the dusk, they left Sadic's father clinging to a sliver of hope with their assurance that Sadic would be safely home before him. With his heart pounding against the quiet of the night, Sadic's father rushed back, each step fueled by a mix of hope and dread. Yet, upon arrival, the harsh truth struck him. Sadic had not returned. His wife, Nahid, who had been oscillating between hope and despair, felt a surge of anxiety grip her as her husband relayed the grim events. Together, they stood at the threshold of their humble abode, eyes straining through the darkness, waiting for any sign of their son. As the hours ticked by, their initial hope turned to despair. The night grew deep and silent, marked only by the occasional distant sounds and the rustling of leaves. By morning, the weight of reality settled in. Their son was still missing, and with each passing moment, their fear grew. Tears became their silent language as the community around them learned of Sadic's plight. News traveled, and soon enough, a relative, moved by the family's torment, suggested that Sadic's father, MD Shafiq, should no longer abide by the kidnappers' threats and instead seek the help of the local authorities. Despite the fear of potential harm that could befall Sadic as retribution for involving the police, the growing desperation and the sheer length of Sadic's disappearance pushed them to act. On September 7th, breaking the kidnappers' directive, Sadic's father made a decision that was both brave and fraught with fear. He dialed his son's number, but the only response was the deafening silence that echoed the void left by Sadic's absence. With no word from his son since August 28th, the situation was becoming unbearable. Resolved to take action despite the risks, on the evening of September 7th, after more than 10 agonizing days, Sadic's parents approached the local police station. They unfolded the series of traumatic events before the authorities. Initially, the police expressed frustration over not being informed sooner. However, as Sadic's parents explained the threats that stifled their actions, understanding dawned on the officers' faces. They realized the acute anguish and paralyzing fear that only a parent in such a dire situation could understand. Immediately, a dedicated team was formed to initiate the search and rescue operation for Sadic. The investigation commenced with a comprehensive examination of Sadic's life, his behavior at college, his interactions with friends, and his familial relationships. It was evident to everyone who knew him that Sadic was a peaceful, honest youth, far removed from any form of trouble. However, during the investigative process, a critical piece of information came to light. Nahid, Sadic's mother, recollected a troubling incident that Sadic had mentioned, a conflict with some colleagues at the poultry farm. Seizing this new lead, the police acted swiftly. They descended upon the poultry farm where Sadic was employed and detained 6 workers present at the time. These individuals were then subjected to intense interrogation. At first, they all denied any wrongdoing, maintaining a facade of innocence. But as the interrogation grew more intense, the facade began to crack. Under significant pressure, for out of the 6 workers, Umang Ching Marma, Suing Marma, Anu Mara, and Ukai Mara, confessed to their involvement in Sadic's disappearance. With these confessions, the investigation took a significant turn. The detainees were formally arrested and charged with kidnapping. The interrogations continued, focusing now on uncovering Sadic's whereabouts and piecing together the extent of the kidnapping plot. Initially reticent, the accused remained tight-lipped about any further details. However, with persistent and rigorous questioning, they eventually began to reveal more about their actions and the identities of 2 other accomplices. This development marked a crucial breakthrough in the case, offering a beacon of hope to Sadic's distraught parents and the tightly knit community that had come together in support. The commitment of the local police to disentangle this complex web of deceit and bring Sadic back to his family became a top priority. As the investigation pressed forward, everyone involved yearned for a resolution that would bring the young man back home, restoring peace to a family shattered by his sudden and mysterious disappearance. On September 11th, a chilling confession unfolded as the suspects detailed their heinous act committed on the night of August 28th. Sadic, who was simply returning home from his day at work, became the target of a brutal plot driven by revenge. The plan was sinister yet straightforward. Abduct Sadic, subject him to severe beating, and then extort a ransom from his distraught parents for his release. Initially, the scheme seemed to progress as intended, and the culprits were on the verge of collecting the ransom. However, the situation took a drastic turn when Sadic inadvertently saw the faces of 2 of his captors. Panicked by the possibility of being identified and subsequently apprehended by law enforcement, they made a grim decision. Believing that Sadic's knowledge of their identities posed a significant risk, they resolved that letting him live was too great a danger. In a horrific act of violence, they attacked Sadic mercilessly with a knife, inflicting multiple wounds from his face down to his feet. The brutality of the assault led to Sadic's immediate death, his lifeblood spilling out onto the ground where he lay. The aftermath was gruesome. Sadic's attackers, driven by a cold calculation to erase any traces of their crime, dismembered his body. They transported the pieces to a secluded hill, where they callously disposed of his remains among the underbrush. When the police, guided by the confession of the culprits, arrived at the scene, they discovered scattered human remains. A short distance away, they found a more intact body, but it was so severely disfigured that identification seemed nearly impossible. Despite the difficulty in recognizing the face, several clues helped confirm the victim's identity. The clothing, the approximate height, and certain personal belongings found at the scene led Sadic's grieving family to a heart-rending confirmation. The remains were indeed those of their beloved son. The horror of the situation was overwhelming, and as the reality of Sadic's fate sank in, the police finalized their arrests, charging the culprits with murder. During the investigation, one of the perpetrators, Umang Ching Mara, revealed more disturbing details. He confessed that although he had once been friends with Sadic, a disagreement a few months prior had soured their relationship. This fallout sowed the seeds of resentment that grew into a vengeful plot against Sadic. Umang Ching's admission did not stop at the act of murder. He shockingly claimed to have cannibalized parts of Sadic's body, an act that added a macabre dimension to an already gruesome crime. The revelation of these details sent shockwaves through the community and the media. Public outrage reached its zenith when, on the evening of September 11th, as the accused were being transported by the police, an infuriated mob overpowered the officers. They exacted visceral, immediate justice on Umang Ching, beating him to death before the judicial system could impose its own sentence. The police struggled to secure the remaining suspects, eventually managing to escort them to the safety of prison cells. This case stirred a national outcry, leading to widespread protests and a collective mourning for the loss of a young life that held so much promise. Sadic, remembered by his parents and all who knew him as a dedicated and loving son, was robbed of his future in a most brutal fashion. As the story of Shibl Sadic Ridawis murder concludes, the community and the nation remain haunted by the brutality of his untimely demise. This case has closed legally, but the wounds it has opened in the hearts of many will take much longer to heal. If there are any further developments, they will be shared to keep the public informed. Meanwhile, Sadic's parents are left to cherish the memory of their son, whose dreams and aspirations were cruelly cut short. For those following this tragic story, your support and attention to our efforts in sharing these truths are invaluable. If you find our content informative and impactful, please consider liking and sharing this video. For those who haven't yet, subscribing will help ensure you stay updated with our latest content. Thank you for your support and for standing with us as we bring these important stories to light.